Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the Bears' very first preseason game of the year. We've got some Cubs, we've got some White Sox. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the Stars tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. Sure, the season is not going on right now, but that shouldn't stop you from heading on over to icehogs.com, getting yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, sign up for season tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I hope you're doing great as well. And I hope you and I are both doing better than the turf at Soldier Field. Because if you want to talk about having a bad time, yeesh.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that this is a thing because the field at Soldier Field has been awful as far back as I can remember. It's never been good. And it just, it made it worse, the fact that I know there's an agenda being pushed about leaving, but also they just had a concert there recently and the field just didn't, I don't think they bothered to replace it. I think
the NFLPA is getting involved with this.
I wouldn't blame them.
No, and you heard multiple people talk about it. And hey, as I told you last week, I was going to Bears Family Festival at Soldier Field. And my buddy and I from work, we went to Bears Family Festival at Soldier Field. So we were there right up close. And what was one of the first things we said? Holy crap, look at that grass. I mean, it was like the ultimate patchwork. Like it looked like, do you know when there's a new house built and they just lay down the sod? Like before you water it, before you plant any seeds or any grubs or anything like that. That's what it looked like. Honestly, that's what it looked like.
I read that there was a few players that urged the team to postpone the game because they were worried about the safety issues of the field.
I know Cairo Santos said something.
Yeah. I forgot who was that said they should postpone the game.
Wrigley Field was available. Could have done a throwback preseason game.
That would have been awesome.
Oh, I would have bought tickets for that, though I couldn't go because we got COVID in our household. But if they didn't, I absolutely would go.
It's bad. It's always been bad, but it just seems like it's mid-season form bad. I mean, you know, it's funny. First, I've been watching my wife and daughter are out of town, so I have a lot of time to just sit around and watch preseason football. So most teams are not in mid-season form. The two things that I've seen that are absolutely in mid-season form is poor officiating and the bad turf at Soldier Field.
Oh, yeah. And maybe Lori Lightfoot put together a little scheme. She wants the Bears to pay for them wanting to leave Chicago. So she called Sir Elton John. Hey, Elton, make sure the people at your concert trash that field as most they could. Oi, what's in it for me?
Oi.
It's my last rodeo, you know?
Oh, man.
Yes, and we will pay you handsomely for it. You know what was funny, too, is, I don't know, did you see the footage or the pictures from Family Festival?
I did.
Did you notice that the south end zone seats weren't even put back?
No, I didn't.
Or sorry, the north end zone. I'm sorry, the north end zone seats. They weren't there because, that's where the stage is. It's usually in the north end zone. And the lower level, those seats are removable. So when you have a concert or whatever, some other non-sporting event, they take out those seats. And they didn't even get a chance to put those seats back for the Family Fest. So the wall, the barrier that would normally be what the seats are in that area, they just, basically propped up some pads. And there was just kind of that big empty space where the north end zone first level seats would be.
I'm just waiting for like 3 days before opening game at Soldier Field there to be a monster truck rally there. Grave diggers doing burnouts in the grass, the 50-yard line.
Wow, this was conveniently scheduled at the last minute right before the opener.
It's an impromptu drag race and monster truck rally.
And then afterwards, there's going to be an excavator convention.
It's a porta potty convention.
Oh, no. Oh, wow. That's sinking low.
I don't know if you've ever seen the Jackass movies.
I've seen bits and pieces of some of them.
There's one where they put somebody in a porta potty and it's attached to like bungee. Have you ever seen there's a ride? It's like the slingshot ride.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
Instead of being in a harness on in a cage that they launch, you're in the porta potty.
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I'm just imagining that right at 50-yard line, just launching Steve-O into a porta potty in the air. And Lori Lightfoot's like, that'll teach the McCaskies.
Speaking of the McCaskies, did not see George at Family Fest. I did not see him on his scooter or yucking it up with the kids. I was looking for him, but I did not see him.
Well, to save a few dollars, he was dressed as Staley.
Staley was there. I saw him on the field, and Jeff Joniak and Tom Thayer were right in front of us on the field too. We were a section next to the tunnel where the players come out, so we were kind of right there in front of the media members. And of course, this is obviously going to be one of our big conversation topics. We were right in front of Roquan Smith, who was obviously not in pads. He had his jersey on, but was not in pads. And remember, that's the morning the bombshell went off. Right as I was getting ready to go, I put my shirt on, I put my hat on, my glasses, made sure I had my wallet, did one more check on my phone. And there was, I think Ian Rappaport was the one who broke it. I'm like, oh, heading to Family Fest, and this happened. Cool. Yeah. So there was obviously a lot. There was obviously an elephant in the room at Family Fest, and this has gone on now for how many days it's been? 5 days, and it's getting uglier, and
Yeah. So I guess we might as well jump into Roquan Smith and to throw, I guess, the sequence of events as they appear to be. And I'm going to preface this by saying this is sort of what's been pieced together because we don't know where the full truth lies.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew that there was a contract negotiation going on. And we knew that Roquan Smith was on the PUP list, and there was no mention of what the injury could be. And it didn't seem like he was hurt, just wasn't practicing, but he was on the sideline. He was in meetings. He was on the sideline on the exercise bikes and things like that. And then at Family Fest, there was the note app that he typed up on his phone and then sent to Ian Rappaport, who then made the announcement. And it seems that he didn't feel good about the negotiations or that they could get one done.
And it's no coincidence that came out on Family Fest Day.
Correct.
Right? No coincidence.
Yes. And then Ryan Poles immediately has his press conference saying, no, we're not trading him. Our goal is to re-sign him. And at that point, we're like, okay, what was the contract that they offered? Because we can kind of guess what kind of contract he's looking for. And it's going to be about 5 years, $100 million ballpark.
Right.
And that's what the last two big time off ball linebackers got. And so we're like, well, what the heck did the Bears offer? And I think a lot of the Bears fans suddenly got on Team Roquan because of that announcement. But then we're like, okay, starting to question, what could this be? Then there was talk of de-escalators where the money could go down if he didn't do certain things.
Mm-hmm.
We still don't know exactly what those de-escalators are. But then I was like, I bet we're going to hear from Adam Schefter in the very near future where it's going to be something pro Bears team. And lo and behold, here comes Adam Schefter with, I saw what the terms of the contract were. I brought it to other GMs who said he should be signing that deal. And suddenly now everybody is left with, in the court of public opinion, what's going on here? And then takes a turn for the weird where somebody from Roquan Smith's camp is calling other teams.
Which is not legal.
Yes, is you have to be a licensed agent to reach out to teams. And of course, none of those teams are going to take those calls because that is tampering. And I'm sure another GM called up Ryan Poles and was like, hey, I am so-and-so from team so-and-so. Nice to meet you. Sorry to bother you, but someone claiming to be in Team Roquan's camp is calling me and asking me about a trade. Just letting you know.
He said his name was SoCon Riff. Funny, that sounds a lot like Roquan Smith.
It's Roquan Smythe.
Hello, this is Roquan Smythe. I am representing Roquan Smith.
Oi!
Oi! and Sean, there's one very important component that we knew was going to be an issue when this story broke. He doesn't have a licensed agent.
Correct.
We all saw the power move, and when it first happened, you're like, all right, he's just trying to get some leverage, play a power move on the Bears. All right, cool. And then you realize, well, he doesn't have an agent, so this might get a little tricky. And listen, having an agent is more than just having someone represent you. They're the ones fielding calls with different teams, trying to gauge what the market is. They are the person in between you and the team that is trying to go forward in this negotiation process. This is basically the guy you are entrusting to help make some of the biggest decisions that you are going to make. And like I said earlier, you can't have a representative that's not a licensed agent making calls when they're not trying to trade you and they're not a licensed agent. It is illegal per the CBA. You can't do that.
And here's another thing to factor in is that the agent, so contract negotiations are business, 100% business.
Right.
It is not personal.
Right.
None of it is personal. It is the team has a salary cap that they have to abide by, and they're trying to get the best players they can at the best prices they can. The player and the agent are conversely trying to get the most money they can for their player.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a business transaction, a business negotiation.
It's all about dollars and cents.
And sometimes hard truths are being told, and it's not always niceties when you're trying to come up with this. And, you know, it could be as simple as, well, my player was the top 5 in tackles. We feel that because they were right there with the number of tackles with player A and player B who got these deals, we feel that we should get this amount of money. And they're like, well, player A had this many forced fumbles, which is 10 times what your player got. And this player also plays running back too. They are, you know, and they got 800 yards rushing, whatever. And so your player can't do that. So that is why we don't. And Roquan seems to be taking this personally.
Yes.
When you have an agent, you are out of it. The agent comes to you, they negotiate on your behalf, they come back to you and give you their professional input on the deal, because it's ultimately the player's choice, but they should just be really looking at the numbers and not find out how the sausage is made. So Roquan now is mixing personal feelings with this business negotiation, and it's not working out well. And Ryan Poles, apparently, from my understanding, told him from the get-go, you should probably have a representation for your negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
And Roquan doesn't want to do that. So I'm not going to say, hey, you have to have an agent, because, you know, there's been plenty of people that negotiate their own deals. But you know what? Usually it's not a player that's negotiating to be a market setter, and it's you're going to another team. It's usually a player that is happy where they are, and they know what the market is, and they say, hey, this is what my market is. I know this is what my market is. Let's just get this number. And, you know, they're happy. It's somewhat team friendly in the ballpark of what they should be. And then, you know, but Roquan wants to set the market.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Bears, I mean, from the offer I'm hearing, not that bad, and it's not that far off of the record setting.
No, it's not.
I think that they're trying to show that they want to show love to a homegrown player, but also they don't value an off-ball linebacker as much as maybe some other team does. And there has to be some sort of compromise on this. And to me, Roquan really had 2 moves. One was the nuclear option, which he already went. And that was to go to Ian Rappaport and demand a trade. And he doesn't have the cards on that. The Bears have the power. He's under contract right now, and the Bears can franchise him next year.
Exactly. That's another component of this whole thing.
But the only other option now, because he's basically shot, you know, his shot, the only other option he has is, if he's not willing to sign, is to just not play. And he has till week 10 to report, and otherwise he loses service time, and he would just go back on the same contract for next year.
And when the Bears took him off the PUP list, you knew exactly what they were doing.
Yes. So the Bears, the Bears, turns out, put him on the PUP list to avoid having any sort of fine issues. So now they removed him from the PUP list. They're saying, you've got to practice. And I wonder how much longer it is before the Bears start playing hardball and start fining him.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that you think about. I mean, especially when they took him off the PUP list, with the rules that come into play here. Yeah, I mean, they could be like, yeah, you're not going to play, you're not going to practice. Well, we're going to lay the hammer down.
Yeah, and they still haven't played hardball with him yet.
They're not yet, but they're setting up a scenario where they could. I mean, they could do it whenever, really, but that move right there will tell you that. To me, it tells me that the Bears are not afraid to stand for themselves either, that they're not just going to give in here.
Right. And, it's a fine line to walk, because you don't want players to walk all over you, but you want to reward players for playing well. And
he's the anchor. He's the anchor of your defense. Even for an off-ball guy, he is insanely important to your defense. He might not put up the fancy stats that other defenders would, whether it's interceptions or sacks or whatever, but he is one of the best tacklers in the game. And his presence on the field, where it just felt like last year, especially, that he was just everywhere. He was everywhere up there in the front seven, wherever the ball was going. He was there to make a tackle. He is very, very important, and you want him to be part of your future. Like, let's not let me make sure I make that very, very clear here. But, at the same time, the Bears also have to do what's in their best interest for both the team and their financials, essentially.
Right. And, look at the weak side linebacker in a Tampa 2 system. And historically, it has been a very good player. And the argument can be, well, the system made the player, and versus the player made the system. But it's built to funnel the weak side linebacker to be a tackling machine. And Roquan is going to thrive in this. So it behooves the Bears to get this contract done too, because, he's going to just get more expensive the longer you wait. So, because you're going to see, as long as he stays healthy and plays this year, he's going to have insane tackle numbers.
Yeah.
So,
and he's only 25.
Yeah.
Right? Only 25.
Yeah. So I think Roquan is a very talented football player, and I don't put him as bad intentions. I think he needs better guidance,
right?
Because he's acting like a young 25.
Yeah.
I think he does need representation. I think he does need to surround himself with others that are more mature and wiser than him. There was whatever the issue was his rookie year that we still don't know about, where the team was very upset with him. There's the allegations against him, which they're, unfounded at this point, but still serious nonetheless. There was the accident that he had near Hallis Hall, and
kind of that weird sophomore year too.
So if the Bears blog, who seems to have some sort of source in there, is accurate, there has been a lot of issues like that that kind of give the Bears brass a headache.
Yeah.
But he has played so well, it makes you put up with it.
Right.
But I think there's probably concerns about paying somebody if you can't fully trust their judgment off the field.
Absolutely. And
I think that goes along with it. And
I think so too. And honestly, I forgot about some of that stuff until you reminded me.
Yeah. So it's, it goes into it because you are paying a player for an on-field performance, but that player represents your team, and the actions they have off the field can have implications on their on-field performance or their availability to play on Sundays. Cough, Cleveland cough. So what happens if you end up paying Roquan his huge sum of money for 5 years and he does something that gets him suspended or injured off the field, that he's not available and you're paying him all this money?
And I'm sure it might be a bit more sensitive now because we've already had 3 Bears get in trouble.
Yeah. And it's so I don't know the fine details of things, but we have 2 sides that are very clearly at an impasse.
Yeah.
That's the best I can say.
Yep.
And some folks will say, I mean, I've seen some takes where they're like, I don't trust Adam Schefter. I believe Ian Rappaport. I personally have not heard Ryan Poles tell lies. He's been very truthful with us and very forthright. I feel that Roquan has certain expectations of being the highest paid linebacker, and that's important to him. And the fact that, this is my personal opinion about what happened, is that the Bears offered him a deal. He was happy with it, and he took it to a lawyer to read the terms, and they told him there was de-escalators or some sort of clause in there that pissed him off. And now he doesn't want to negotiate in good faith because he's upset. That's my take on it.
Yep.
And
I think that's the best way to describe it.
And honestly, it's another reason why there should be professional representation, because an agent knows the language. And sure, you're going to bring it to your lawyer to read the term, to read it all and the legalese, but the agent, any of the big points in there, is going to know exactly what they mean and be able to present it to the player and understand all the negotiations. I think Cliff Stein, who's now back to negotiating contracts for the Bears, has been doing this a long time and is very good at it. And this is not a knock on Roquan Smith. He might be very smart, not saying he's stupid, but that is not his expertise in the contract negotiations at an NFL contracts. So it is an expert speaking to a layperson, and there's always going to be complications with that.
Yep. Well said.
So with that said, I really hope a contract gets done soon, because my fear is that the longer this takes, when he starts playing, he is not going to be ready to play football and is either going to be out of shape or get injured I think he needs these last couple of weeks of training camp in order to be ready.
Yeah, it's kind of important.
So hopefully the Bears start playing hardball and force him into practicing, because even if he doesn't play in the games, I don't care. I do not care at all if he doesn't play in these preseason games, but I want him in practice, learning this new system, getting his body acclimated to hits, and being ready to go.
The hits principle, you mean?
The hits principle.
Yeah, important to know.
But the Bears did have their very first preseason game today.
That they did.
I listened to it. I was at work, so I listened to the game, and then I came home and I watched the replay of it. And my mantra has been and will continue to be, don't get too worked up either direction about a preseason game. And, there's things you can take away from it, but the outcome doesn't matter. But don't get too excited about the highs. Don't get too down about the lows. It is a preseason game.
I mean, really, the biggest thing I was low about today was the right side of the offensive line when Justin Fields was in there. That was getting mauled to death. But, other than that, there was nothing about that game that made me say, oh, my God, this is so unbelievably terrible. I can't bear to watch. My eyes.
Right. I agree. The offense needs to work on a little timing. They were calling pretty vanilla plays.
They were.
Justin looks pretty good. But you're right. The offensive line needs to be better. Michael Schofield was not good today.
Yeah, he got hurt pretty bad out there. And when I mean hurt, I mean beat. I mean, they were turnstiling him today. And obviously you don't want that for your young quarterback that you're trying to develop here. And, you saw early on it start to kind of crumble on the offensive line. You're like, oh boy, here we go. But with that being said, I liked some of the stuff that Justin Fields did when he was under pressure. That throw that he had to Sharp was beautiful. It was a beautiful ball. It was a beautiful catch. And that's taking something that more often than not turns into something negative and turned it into a big positive. I mean, that right there to me is the play of the game.
That throw to Mooney was very good too.
Yes, it was.
At first, when I watched, when I heard it, I was like, oh, this sounds good. And then when I watched it, I was like, it doesn't look like a good throw. But then I rewatched it again and I was like, no, actually, that's a really good throw, because he had the safety coming over the top, so he couldn't throw it deep. So essentially he threw it short and high pointed it, knowing that Darnell Mooney was going to go up there and take it.
Well, that's the whole thing. He threw that knowing that it wouldn't be interceptable. I mean, it was basically a way of saying the only person that could possibly catch this is Darnell Mooney. And he did.
Yeah, because he threw it where that safety didn't have a chance at it. But if he threw it deep, that safety was either going to intercept it, break it up, or clean Darnell Mooney's clock. So he threw it. Darnell Mooney had a step, and then he stopped and slowed down and had the time to turn and prepare himself to jump. And that cornerback is reacting, and he's still running, and then he's got to stop and turn and jump without any sort of as an all reaction. So there was really no chance for anybody to get that ball but Darnell Mooney, unless he missed it, tipped it straight up, and but assuming that he either catches it or just drops it, there's no way it's getting intercepted. So I was really happy with that throw. The rollout, the run by Fields, I thought was very good.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's learning that even though he can make these big runs, that he doesn't need to put himself at risk is he ran out of bounds, put the ball forward, got the first down, ran out of bounds, didn't get hit. My one issue was when he slid, when he scrambled and he slid, he got hit and there was no flag on that.
Unbelievable. I mean, that was textbook.
Yeah. And listen, like the defensive player, there was no ill will and it was not malicious at all.
No.
He was trying to avoid him, but he made, and if he would have been, I mean, if he would have got him in the shoulder pad, I probably would have been like, okay, he's trying to avoid him. He's doing his best, but he got him in the helmet. Like, he got him in the helmet and hit a quarterback that gave himself up after the slide. That's textbook. That should just be 15 yards. Intent or not.
Right. Yeah. I don't think he was intentionally trying to be malicious, but that is a textbook penalty. And you know that if that was Pat Mahomes, it absolutely would have been a flag.
Pat Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. They're all going to get that 100% of the time. They are going to get that call. And Justin Fields said in an interview afterwards, he's like, well, once I'm established, I hope I start getting that call too.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, I went up and talked to the ref and was like, hey, why didn't I get that? And he's like, well, I thought he just, he just got your shoulder. And like I said, if it was just a shoulder and he's trying to avoid contact, okay, not a big deal. But it really did look like he got him in the helmet.
Absolutely. And I think too, I was at first, the first few seconds, I was more concerned about Fields, and then he was clearly fine. It's like, okay, then why wasn't that a penalty? But, preseason game, as long as Fields is all right, it's not a big deal. If this was a regular season game, there'd obviously be a bit more of an implication there, because that could obviously change a drive, which can change a game. But, in this case, luckily, there was no injury done and there was no real consequence of a game because it's a preseason game.
Right. What else on offense? Tristan Ebner looked really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had some nice runs.
And I wonder if he ends up moving up to number 2 on the depth chart at running back, because I mean, he did look good and he's a draft pick of this front office.
He's a bit more explosive, I feel like, than
I like Khalil Herbert, but
as do I.
But if you're Khalil Herbert, you've sort of probably got to see the writing on the wall, because you're like, I was not drafted by this GM, and I'm going up against the guy who had a really nice first preseason game, and people, and the reports are out of training camp that Ebner looks really good. So I would be a little worried about losing my depth chart. I think both guys make the roster, but I would worry about losing snaps.
Yeah, and the thing about Khalil Herbert too is, I don't know how much you want to read in this. It's preseason game 1, so I'm not going to read too much into it, but I definitely felt like Herbert today was a step slower than he normally was. Just, I don't know. It didn't look as grindy as he did last year. But again, this is a preseason game, so I'm not going to read too much into it. He had that one bad drop, which, whatever. That was, I believe, the last throw of Justin Fields' game, because we saw on third down, they ran the ball and got off the field. And I said I would have liked to have seen them pass the ball there. I think most people did. However, I think Justin Fields just met his quota, and they're like, all right, the rest of this drive, we're just going to run the ball, and then Justin Stay's going to be done. So again, I'm not going to read too much into that.
Yeah, I don't blame them. I don't know if you watched the Jets game last night.
I heard about Wilson.
Yeah. Wilson got a knee injury, and it looked real bad.
Yeah, it did.
It was a non-contact injury, and there's there's a group of like orthopedic surgeons, and that's led by a guy who was a head team doctor in the NFL for like 17 years. And he makes observations about his, what he sees on film, just watching at home, about injuries. And he was sure that was an ACL.
Oh, I mean, there were people reporting, fearing that it was an ACL.
And they said that that's either an ACL, or the hope is because he had the sprain last year in his knee. They said that the hope would be that the wobbliness from, the caused by the sprain would have kind of protected the ACL and end up being a bone bruise, where it would be like a 4 to 6 week injury. And so now they're saying like 4 weeks. So I think they lucked out with Zach Wilson there.
They absolutely did. But, regardless, you still don't want to see your young upcoming quarterback have an injury like that.
No, 2 years in a row with a knee injury.
Yeah, not ideal.
Not ideal at all. Especially when they were struggling. He needs that time. Watching the other games, what's his name from Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence, he looked sensational. He looked so comfortable in that offense. Justin Fields, you see improvement. I saw some good things from Trey Lance.
Yeah, Trey Lance threw some nice balls.
Do you know who didn't look good?
Jordan Love.
Jordan Love did not look good at all.
They got to be thankful that they were able to extend Rodgers, because
yeah. And again, I'm not going to extrapolate anything from one preseason game, but Jordan Love has been in the league for several years now, and his reports from practices and from any time he's played in regular season and his preseason numbers, none of it adds up.
No, it's
I think they got a lemon, and I just can't wait for the comeuppance of the Packer fans when they have to survive life without a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Oh, just wait. They'll find somebody else. They'll find a third.
Oh, what if they don't? What if this comes back and we're like, oh, look at all of the quarterbacks that the Packers have had since the Bears first drafted Justin Fields.
We could dream, right?
I'm if that's going to be the reality.
Oh my God. Are you chugging Kool-Aid already?
I have Joker lips right now. But the offense looked like it was a little bit out of sync. They were calling vanilla plays, but
it was still better play calling than Nagy.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you didn't feel like a 3rd and 9 was a hopeless impossibility. You just got to get that offensive line gelling. And Riley Reif was not playing. It was Larry Borum at right tackle, who struggled a little bit. He had some moments where he looked good, but he had some moments where he struggled a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Schofield struggled mightily.
Mm-hmm.
I'm peeking out the window for Olin Kreutz. But
what did you say?
I'm about to say something about Sam Mustipher, and I don't want to get choked. But Sam Mustipher, meh. Cody Whitehair looked fine, and Braxton Jones looked pretty good. I mean, he had a couple of plays where he got worked, but overall, I would say Braxton Jones played really well.
The left side definitely looked better than the right side.
Yes, absolutely. And, you're going to see improvement because there are other options at right guard than Schofield. And Riley Reif is still an option, or probably your likely option at right tackle. So.
And there are other factors too in the offense, the starting offense. You didn't have Cole Kmet and you didn't have David Montgomery. I mean, those two make a difference right then and there. So honestly, I look at the starting offenses, take Justin Fields for what he did, take Darnell Mooney for what he did, and some of the other receivers. And, that's just kind of what you can look at it as. And it not wasn't much else.
Yeah, it wasn't a disaster by any stretch.
No.
Your starting offense was in like 2 series, and the second one you moved the ball pretty well. Mm-hmm. So you go, all right, we weren't great, we weren't terrible. Let's go watch the film and get better.
But hey, Trevor Siemian put on a show, right?
Yeah. And that always happens, is there's going to be that second half hero. But, honestly, I don't care about the outcome of the preseason games. It's more of I look at what players did well, what plays sort of worked, where there needs to be improvement. And I'm just going to say this is if you read Twitter, there's so many people like, oh, that's another L for polls. And I'm like, what L's has this guy taken? Look at the first draft he ever had. Jaquan Brisker looks like a stud.
Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest takeaways from this game. If you're going to take something away, Jaquan Brisker was one of them.
The guy was a beast. And Kyler Gordon, from all the reports, sounds like he's going to be pretty darn good. And it sounds like you got your starting left tackle and what's looking like it's going to be a regular contributor year 1 in a wide receiver, and all this without, and a whole bunch of backups, like all of this with no first round pick. That sounds like a pretty damn good draft.
We saw some Dominic Robinson stuff too.
Yeah.
Don't forget that.
Yeah. So you're going to have a rotation piece on the defensive line, starting left tackle, a stud at safety, and hopefully a stud at cornerback, and a weapon wide receiver, and a bunch of offensive line backups. And you got a running back. So that sounds, if you can do that every year, that seems like a home run to me. Larry Ogunjobi failed his physical. Oh man, L.
Oh.
Yeah. On the other side of the ball, I think our corner depth is a little rough, especially with Kyler Gordon not playing.
Yeah, you hope he gets healthy and ready back again. He's kind of important.
Yeah, because otherwise it's going to be that the cornerback situation's not going to be good. But the defensive line looked great, and I thought the linebackers played really, really well.
I was very impressed. I was very, very impressed with the defensive line.
Yeah, and the linebackers, I had very low expectations, and I thought the linebacker play was exceptional.
They were making all the plays up front, and then you saw the defensive line and all those front, those guys in the front. They were getting pressure on the quarterback. You saw them get a few sacks, including Dominic Robinson in the second half.
Right. Muhammad had some nice plays, but the actual linebacking core, I mean, even down to second string, Jack Sanborn had an interception, a fumble recovery, and just
Jack Sanborn had a hell of a game.
He had a hell of a game, and that's awesome because he had family because he's local. He's what, Lake Zurich?
I believe so.
So he's local, and he had family that came into the game for the game, and while he was being interviewed after the game, he's like, have you checked your phone? And he's like, a little bit. And they were like, well, we'll let you go to text your mom. He's like, okay, thanks. But yeah, I mean, he had an exceptional game, and for another undrafted rookie, could very well be a regular contributor as a linebacker.
Boy, would you love to have depth like that you can rely on.
Yeah. So evaluation is important, and identifying and, taking a guy like Jack Sanborn is a low risk, high reward situation. He's local, and you didn't have to pay him much. And if he comes in and lays an egg, no big deal. He's gone. You wash your hands of him. But if he comes in and he's a player like he was in college, and you're not wasting a draft pick on him. And I understand why he wasn't drafted. He's not that fast, and there's concerns about his athleticism, but he was just a playmaker. And so sometimes it's risky to just waste a draft pick on a guy that's a playmaker without the athletic intangibles, because you worry about making that transition from college to the pros and still being able to do that. But when they're an undrafted rookie, who cares? If he doesn't make the transition, you just cut him. You didn't waste anything. No resources were wasted. So the fact that he's coming in and looking like he can play pretty well, huge plus for the Bears.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was fun watching him today, and it was fun watching those, depth guys and rookies. They played with a lot of heart today. They played with a lot of energy. I mean, they were out there doing it all. All 14 points were scored in the first half. They didn't let the Chiefs do anything in the second half. And I know they had Crum in there, a quarterback, and a bunch of other dudes. It's not like they were doing this against Pat Mahomes, but when you see them play well and you see them bring forth the effort and the energy, and you like the fundamental stuff that they have, I mean, they were tackling very, very well too. Towards the end of the game, you had Thomas make a really, really nice tackle, AJ Thomas, to set up that fourth down, which they eventually made the stop, which ended the game. I mean, that kind of stuff matters. And that was another thing that I was overall pleased with in this game today, is that the tackling overall looked pretty good.
And it wasn't all just tackling. It was gang tackling. Is everybody came in there to make those tackles.
Yes.
And, one thing I can say is, even when you have a guy wrapped up in the backfield, the gang tackle is nice, because how many times have we seen a guy either have a second lunge where he picks up a yard or two when it would have been a 2-yard loss, or he slips that tackle and ends up making a play? Is bring him to the ground. Don't give up any extra yards that you don't have to give up, and make plays for the ball. And, when you have gang tackling, you can have multiple people peanut punching, and you're not, the worry about the peanut punch is somebody breaking a tackle or you're not making the tackle. But when you have that second, third guy in going for a peanut punch, that's all they're there for. It's just to try to knock the ball loose. And, everybody else is wrapping them up. So,
and not only does it help Rely get a tackle in that situation, but it also increases your chances, if you strip the ball, of you getting the ball.
Absolutely. So I love that principle. And it's amazing that, that should be regardless of your style of defense. Is any defense should be hustle, get to the ball, swarm the ball carrier. And I don't know why all defenses don't preach those philosophies.
Dog pile.
hits principle.
They're gonna say that every time they get a tackle. Hits principle.
But yeah, overall, like it was nice to see Bears football. Oh, I forgot. You also drafted your future long-term punter.
I was just gonna bring Gil up. I was just gonna bring him up. He had some punts today.
Yeah, if this is what we're getting, they definitely upgraded over Mega Kick.
Well, did you see what the punting god did today?
No.
You look up the highlight. The thing is, it ended up being a touchback, but like it was an insane punt, just distance wise. You got to look it up.
All right. But yeah, Pat O'Donnell was a meh punter. I mean, he wasn't terrible by any stretch, but he wasn't great by any stretch.
He was what, average, I'd say?
Yeah, he was average, maybe slightly above average. But it was one of those things is like, all right, well, how do you upgrade over your punter without spending big on a punter? He was affordable. He was here. You knew him. But finally they were just like, all right, well, now he's a veteran. He's actually costing, a fairly sizable chunk of money. Why? Let's draft somebody. And they got a guy who's got a leg on him. So happy there. So a punter, a backup running back, potentially future starting running back, your left tackle, your cornerback, your strong safety, a rotational defensive line piece, and backup offensive lineman in one draft without a first rounder. Okay. I'll take that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's already better than any draft by Pohl's predecessor.
He who shall not be named.
Yeah, I mean, name one draft class is, that's shaping up that good under Ryan Pace.
Because the drafts were always, the picks were always in bits and pieces everywhere. You had some good, some bad in 15, some good, some bad in 16, so on and so forth.
But
it was always just such a mixed bag.
Yeah, but it was his draft, record in early picks that just really cost him. Trading up, so losing draft capital and failure at high picks. How many first and second rounders just didn't pan out?
Too many.
Absolutely too many. Looking up his draft history quick.
Do we have to?
Yes, we do.
Well, haven't we done this enough?
First rounder Kevin White. Eddie Goldman started off real good, and then at the end just really
it just kind of ended.
Fizzled. Hronis Grasu was a third round pick. You know what? USA Today crashed. So you lucked out.
Yeah, exactly. That should be a sign that you should stop this.
USA Today is Buffalo Bill fan puking. Don't make me review this.
You crashed. It puked too much code. You crashed.
But overall, it was fine. Got the Bears football in my veins. It gave them something, some good things and some things that they need to clean up. And, that's, if this is the type of play we get all year, I think we're going to wind up with the record that we all expected.
Oh boy, you went from it's preseason, don't read into it, into the Kool-Aid mix. Oh boy.
No. I'm saying is if this is how they play this is really what we expected, a 6, 7, 8 win team.
Well, yeah, I'll say this is that something that was really encouraging to me was that the basic fundamentals of like not making dumb mistakes with penalties or just completely not knowing your assignment, you didn't really see much of that today.
No.
I mean, anything wrong that happened? I mean, you look at the offensive line, they got out muscled at times. All right. They're not the best at blocking. Okay. But in terms of missing an assignment or committing a dumb penalty, you really didn't see that.
Right. And you know what? It's the penalties that really kill you.
Right. Exactly. And if Eberflus has this team well disciplined, then that is a good sign going forward. And, you know, as we go along, what I want to see more and more of is what kind of, how good is Eberflus at the coachy coach things, so to speak, the technical things. How good is he at clock management? How good is he with timeouts? All that kind of stuff, the discipline. We want to see more and more of how good he is at that kind of a thing. And what I also like too is that, you know, Luke Getsy did his thing, and it seemed like he's not that Eberflus isn't overstepping his boundaries into that. That's a nice thing to see, because I'm not worried about that being an issue. I don't think it's going to become an issue. I am confident that Eberflus is going to let his offensive coordinator do what he needs to do. I'm not worried like with Matt Nagy, where, you know, Matt Nagy would come in and want to call the plays and do this and do that. That's something I'm not really concerned about.
Just an FYI, Andy, this is how little you should be reading into first game of preseason stats. Is Andy Dalton's quarterback rating today was 148.8.
Oh yeah.
Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah.
And the Steelers have 3 quarterbacks with over 100 quarterback rating today,
including Mitch.
Yep. Including
George Pickens looks good.
Again, preseason. Here's the thing is it's fine. He can look good. Nobody's rooting against him. We could have drafted him. We drafted Jaquan Brisker, who
I know
is looking pretty darn good himself. You know, if Velus Jones looks real good, that bodes well for the Bears, because you're like, oh, well, we could have had a really good wide receiver, or we could have had a really good wide receiver and a really good safety.
I'm trying not to think about it. I'm sorry I even said anything.
I'm rooting for everybody to have fun.
Okay. All
right. So yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a little disappointed that there's only going to be 3 preseason games. That 4th preseason game is play-wise dog turd tacos, but I like seeing guys that get extended playing time to win those last roster spots.
You just like going to that game and covering yourself with meatball sauce.
Facts. But yeah, so next week we have we have a Thursday night game against the Seattle Seahawks.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we'll probably see Justin Fields the first half, my guess.
Seem reasonable. And then you got Cleveland, the final game.
Cleveland, the final game. We play Cleveland every year, I think.
Every preseason. When's the last time we played the Seahawks in preseason? Because I feel like preseason, it's always Cleveland, Washington, Denver, the Dolphins, and we play the Chiefs a lot in the preseason. Yeah. It's always like those teams.
Yeah, but that last preseason game sucks because it is in Cleveland. That would be the game I would take my kid to. Because
you're not going to go all the way to Cleveland and take your kid there for a preseason game?
Why in the world would I take my kid to Cleveland?
See the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
All right. You know what? I used to shit all over the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame until I actually went. It was pretty cool.
It is cool.
I had to go to Cleveland for a work trip several years ago, and my hotel was walking distance from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I had some meetings get canceled the first day. So I was like, I have literally 6 hours until this place closes. I'm just going to walk over. I walked over and I was like, oh man, like this is actually really cool. And I stayed there for the whole time. And I would like to go back, but the rest of the city was kind of garbage.
Hey, that's where we won the World Series, man.
You know what? Just because one awesome thing happened there does not make it a good place.
I want to see how high that Cuyahoga River flame can get up to. Wasn't it Cleveland too that had that giant balloon release, and then the balloons just ended up like polluting rivers and stuff?
I don't know, but that wouldn't be far-fetched, I don't think.
Yeah, because I think that happened in like the 80s or something. Like it was the world's biggest balloon release or something like that.
Oh,
I'm 99% sure that was Cleveland.
I will believe you, but that sounds ridiculous, like a Cleveland thing to do.
Yeah, you want to release some balloons. They're just not really good for the environment.
No, they're not.
And I mean, we're talking like an insane amount of balloons. Like they looked like the world's biggest swarm of bees when they were released. It's on YouTube. Look it up.
All right. I promise you I will.
You better.
Oh, I will.
All right.
So let's switch gears here and talk a little baseball.
Mm-hmm.
The White Sox are so damn frustrating.
That series in Cleveland was no bueno.
So last time we talked, the White Sox were 2 games or a game and a half out of first or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So now the Twins are in second place. Cleveland is in first place in the division. The White Sox are now 3 games out of first.
They win tonight, it'll be 2.5.
True. But we talked about this easy stretch they had. This 14-game stretch would be very important for their chances of winning the division. And we talked ad nauseum about the first 3-game set against Kansas City, and they win 2-1, and you're like, okay, can live with that. But then they split a 4-game series against Texas, and then they lose 3 of 4 in Kansas City.
I mean, that was bad. And I mean, you look at the last 2 losses, the final game of the series, they had like 14 hits and only 3 runs. They had bases loaded, nobody out. They didn't get any runs. They had plenty of other opportunities to take the lead and they didn't. And that is as frustrating as it gets. And that was coming off a game where you had a 3-1 lead and then it evaporated quickly and you eventually lost like 8-3. And, that leaves a sour taste in your mouth. And it is a good thing that Michael Kopech absolutely dominated through 6 no-hit sparkling innings against the Tigers to stop that losing streak, because if they would have lost to the Tigers on Friday night, they would have been 4.5 back. And now they're potentially going to be only 2.5, depending on what they do tonight. But regardless, if you would have fallen 4.5 back, that doesn't feel good at all, obviously, where you're at. And
it doesn't feel good, especially when you finish this set, you got a 4-game set against Houston Astros.
It's funny, though. It is funny. We've often seen teams struggle against bottom feeders, and then they play actual competition, and they look a lot better. And I'm not saying I'm guaranteeing the White Sox are going to dominate the Astros, but I will say this. If you, just looking at this optimistically, I'll throw an optimistic point into this conversation. I feel like the White Sox have played the better teams better this year than they did last year. Is that fair?
Maybe.
I'm not saying they played them great, but they've certainly played them better. They did beat the season series 4-2 against the Rays. They took 2 of 3 at home against, I think it was the Blue Jays. They did win 2 or 3 against the Yankees on the road. So they have played better teams better, but the better teams are also better now because they made moves at the deadline. So, this is going to be a big spot for the White Sox no matter what. If they want to prove that they're for real and they could win this division, they're going to just need to play better baseball. And look, if you can sweep the Tigers and kind of get that off your plate and go into these tougher stretches of games with a bit more confidence, that could go a long way. You got to take it one game at a time. You got to win the game that's tonight. You got to win tomorrow. The Tigers are miserable. You got to take care of business there. But, this is do or die time basically. And this division race is going to come down to the wire because the division's so bad, but you want to be able to at least stay with it now, because if you fall behind, it could be hard to dig yourself out depending on what the other teams in the division do. You don't want to rely on the other teams in the division to keep you in it. You want to take control back at this point of the game. It's not May, it's not June, it's August.
Yeah. And you know what? Even if you have played the good teams tough, you don't want to be 4+ games out of first this late in the season and then playing 4 straight game and have to win and paint yourself in a corner, having to win against the best team in the American League record wise.
Right.
In the Astros. And it's not just there. You got 4 at home versus Houston. Then you go at Cleveland for 3. And those really become must wins especially
Cleveland.
Yeah, because they're in first place. So if you're still 3 to 5 games behind them, this gets to be really important because, for them, only winning 1 game in that series is kind of a win for them.
Mm-hmm.
Is because they're just trying to hold you off. So if they win the series, obviously they gain, but if in a 3-game set, they go 1-2, you only gain 1 game on them.
Right.
So it's a little bit tough. You get the 1 against Kansas City, then you go 3 at Baltimore, which again, Baltimore is not a pushover team. They already played you really tough.
Baltimore is they're kind of a fun team right now.
Yeah, if they weren't in that juggernaut of a division, look at their record. They're 5 games over 500.
Who would have thought that the Orioles would be 5 games above at this point of the game?
Yeah. They would be right in the hunt for the division lead in the AL Central instead of 12 back in the East.
Right. Yep.
If you're the White Sox and the thing is now you got to do it without Tim Anderson.
Yeah. The injury is a really tough blow. He's the engine that makes your offense go. And he's obviously a really big part of that team. So it makes things just so much more difficult when you don't have him around, but this has got to be a next man up opportunity for these guys. You need Eloy to keep hitting. He's been hitting very well. Jose Abreu driving in runs. You need Yohan Moncada to, find some consistency. Yasmani Grandval to find some consistency. The guys are just going to have to step up here.
Yeah. And they're working with AJ Pollock hitting the leadoff spot. It's not just the hitting with Tim Anderson, it's that important leadoff spot.
Yeah. You what you want to see is AJ Pollock consistently hit too, because he's important for your team.
Absolutely. But again, with these ridiculous lineups by your manager, is why do they have Yohan Moncada batting second? The guy has a 268 OBP.
Andrew Vaughn should be batting second.
No, he tonight is batting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's batting 6th.
I don't know. Doesn't batting him second make all the sense in the world?
Yeah, I would say so.
I mean, he's such a good hitter.
Yeah, that's probably what I would do. And you have Grandal batting. Grandal and Moncada are both batting higher than Andrew Vaughn. And
you could get away with that against the Tigers, but if you're playing a meaningful game, you would much rather have Andrew Vaughn in that spot.
Yeah. So you're batting two guys with sub 600 OPSs in front of Andrew Vaughn. Like that's nonsense. And again, you're giving more at bats to Leury Garcia.
What does Tony La Russa have with him, or what does he have on Tony La Russa is a better question.
I have no idea. I mean, we've asked so many times.
Why is it that, you have Luis Robert and you have Andrew Vaughn? Oh, they need a little rest. Yet Garcia is like Iron Man.
And he gets hurt and they're like, oh, let's give him 5 minutes. All right, put him back in.
Yep.
It's such nonsense. I can't explain Tony La Russa. And the scary part is that guy is like a Supreme Court justice. He's got a job for life if he wants it.
Yeah.
But the White Sox are going to have to float here for 6 weeks until Tim Anderson comes back.
Yeah, we'll see how they handle this.
So it's not, things are not adding up well when you have a manager that handicaps you. And it's funny, I don't hate piling up, but it gets a little old piling up on Tony La Russa, but honestly is every single concern that we as fans had about the White Sox hiring Tony La Russa have really come true in one form or another. And we got poo-pooed. Well, he's a Hall of Fame manager. He's won a World Series. You think you know more than him? Well, we just called it like we see it. It doesn't take a Hall of Fame manager to realize that Tony La Russa in 2022 is a bungling idiot.
Yeah, I mean, you heard what Johnny Cueto said about wondering how many people have fire in the clubhouse, and Tony La Russa going, "Oh, I don't know about that. Oh, that should be something that's talked about, in the clubhouse." Oh, really? Like, the way you publicly bashed Yermin Mercedes last year?
It's Johnny Cueto is somebody that has all the, the room to talk about it because he has gone out there and competed.
Right. I mean, Johnny Cueto's a winner. He's been amazing for the White Sox this year. He's won a World Series before. He's been around. He's been an all-star. He knows what it takes to win. That's a guy that I think a lot of people probably look up to. His demeanor, his work ethic is just something to be marveled.
Absolutely.
And he's not making shit up or bullshitting. He's telling it as it is. And, hopefully for the White Sox, it's a wake-up call because they need to find some consistency here. But, if you win tonight and they're winning right now 5-4, if you could win tonight, win 2 in a row, you got to take advantage of what's left of your schedule that you have to take advantage of and hopefully carry that momentum into some of these tougher games.
Right. And that's the hope. If the White Sox can get the sweep here of Detroit, they're going to hang around. I think
you'll be only 2.5 back of Cleveland.
Yeah. If you can go ahead, dream scenario. I'm sorry, not dream, because obviously the dream would be the Guardians go on a losing streak and then the White Sox win the rest of the series and gain ground on every day. But ideally here, in the most realistic senses, the White Sox can leapfrog or draw even with Minnesota by the end of the series.
Yeah.
And that's less daunting of a task, is only having to chase down Cleveland.
Right.
Is chasing two teams is tough because inevitably somebody's going to get hot and is going to gain ground that, you're chasing, one starts gaining ground while you're gaining ground on the other one. And then the other one gets hot. You just never feel like you catch up. It's hard to do. If you can catch up to Minnesota and just have to hunt down Cleveland, you're in a better spot.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, they got to focus on themselves. They can only control themselves and what games they win. And I know a lot of people don't agree, but I'm still picking them to win this division. I just don't think the other teams are good enough to win this division. I think Cleveland deserves a lot of props for what they're doing, especially Tito. He's doing a great job with this team, and they know how to develop guys. They're not quite there yet. I don't think they have the talent, and I just don't, even with the pitching reinforcement the Twins have, I just don't think it's good enough. You saw them play contenders in the Dodgers, and they got absolutely smoked. And, the Twins, I don't think are the worst team in the world, obviously. I just don't think they're good enough. So,
and we're seeing them fade back into the pack. The hope is here that the Cleveland comes back down to earth a little bit with a tougher schedule.
And I think they will, honestly. As much as props as they deserve, I think they will come down to earth a bit.
Yeah. So they got Toronto tomorrow, which is a tough game. They got 4 against Detroit, which, let's be honest, they're probably going to pad their division lead there.
No, you never know. Baseball's weird, but Detroit is awful. They're awful.
Yeah, they're terrible. You got 3 against the Sox, 2 against San Diego, 4 against Seattle, and then 3 against Baltimore, and then 3 against Seattle. That's a tough stretch.
Tough. That the White Sox can take over right then and there if they want to, but they're going to have to want to. Yeah,
it's, again, the Baltimore giveth, Baltimore taketh away. But those Seattle games are going to be tough, where you've got seven games against Seattle. Seattle's real good.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are. Yeah, I mean, the stars should still be aligned for the White Sox to win this division. It's on them to play more consistent baseball and take it.
That's the hope. Other side of town, the Cubs. So what were your thoughts on the Field of Dreams game?
I had fun with it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was cool. It was aesthetically pleasing just to look at that ballpark with the corn and all the wonderful cheese that is from that movie. I enjoyed every minute of it. The uniforms on the Reds and the Cubs were fantastic.
Chef's kiss.
Ah.
What did you think about Harry Carey?
I wasn't insulted. I didn't think it was insulting. I just thought it was creepy.
He was a little creepy. I wonder
but whatever.
I wonder why they chose that Harry Carey as opposed to the later Harry Carey.
Maybe they just wanted to remember him in his prime.
I'm not knocking the choice at all. It seems, it's I would say the national audience probably more familiar with the late stage Harry Carey.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, maybe they thought that would have been disrespectful. Maybe,
I don't know.
When I heard about it, what I had in my head was really bad, and what I saw, I still probably would not have been my choice to do, but it was a lot better than this bad image that I had created in my mind.
I was imagining like a Nintendo 64 character, if you know what I mean.
I'm just picturing something that's just awful, like a bad animatronic. And just like in the middle of it, just and slumps over. Like, if
only it was a redressed Chuck E. Cheese animatronic. Hey kids, let me hear ya. One, two, three.
He breaks into the Showbiz Pizza Band. Do you love me? Do you love?
Put it up for Cheesy McCheesy.
Next thing you know, it pans over and there's a gorilla wearing a sequin jacket playing the keyboard.
I thought this was the 7th inning stretch. What the hell is this? When they're done with it, they just throw it into the cornfield.
But honestly, it was not as bad as I thought it would be. Still not the choice I would have made. I get what they were trying to do, but still not what I would have done. But it also was not the embarrassment that I thought it was going to be when I heard about it.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't take anything away from the experience because I really enjoyed the crap out of that game, and it made it better that the Cubs won. They won a nice, solid ball game. They got 3 runs in the first. You saw Nick Madrigal collect multiple hits. You saw Seiya Suzuki driving a run. You saw Nico Horner driving a run. You saw Drew Smiley have a nice outing. You saw the bullpen shut it down towards the end. It was a fun ball game.
Yeah, it was. It was really fun. It helped that the Reds are reminding us all that they are the worst team in the National League. So it's always nice to be able to beat up on a team that's worse than you. But I'm going to say this cautiously. I'm slowly and steadily and carefully reeling back my criticisms of Nick Madrigal.
He got on base 3 times tonight so far as we speak. Maybe he just needed to be healthy.
Maybe he needed to be healthy and just take a break, come back. And, I still don't understand where in the long road he fits in. Because I think you do need some star boppers to come in. And the problem is that so obviously first base is a place you can easily upgrade. But Nico Horner has had a nice season. Can you upgrade over him? Yes, you could add somebody with more pop in their bat.
And you can move Nico to second.
And then what do you do with Madrigal?
Oh, that's the question. But my point is, that's where it gets a little tricky because you can't get rid of Nico Horner. Look how good he's been.
No, you can't. You can't. And is he going to be as effective as a batter if you start moving him around where one day he's playing second, one day he's playing short, one day he's playing left, one day he's playing right, one day he's DHing. Some players don't respond well to that. You saw Chris Bryant do fine that way, but can Nico Horner do that? Is that an option? Because that would make him really valuable if you are able to play him all over the place. And so you never really lose him out of the lineup. And also you're relying less on bench guys to come in and play.
Yeah. And I mean, you can look at it this way too. Let's say you landed one of these guys, one of these big fish at shortstop that have the arm and the capability of playing third base. Well, then maybe you move him to third base and Madrigal and Nico could still be your up the middle guys.
That's the possibility. And, you know, and then you could still put Wisdom at first base to keep. I don't want to phrase this correctly. Is I'm not in love or married to Patrick Wisdom, but he has been more than adequate for where you are in your rebuild process. And I don't want to cast him off, you know, like unceremoniously, just like, huzzah, you be gone. And that bat has not been that bad. So I just don't know who out there is the bigger long-term first base option.
Well, that's kind of the black hole right now. Do you move one of those prospects into that position? Is Owen Casey one of those guys? Is Bryce Ball, an actual first baseman, going to be one of those guys? Do you transmit somebody into that position? That's kind of a mystery right now. It's kind of the spot where you're like, it feels very up in the air for the time being.
The one clear thing that we have about first base is that Frank Schwindel is not the answer.
Yeah, and no disrespect to the guy, but yeah, I think that that chapter has come to a close.
It's, we kind of put Wisdom and Schwindel in that same bucket of guys that surprised us later in their careers, and would either one of them be able to stick? Schwindel did not. And I think Wisdom has.
I mean, Wisdom can at least hit you 20 plus homers.
Yeah. I just, he's not terrible.
He's just very one-dimensional. He's very limited to what he can do, but what he does do well, he can do fairly well.
Yeah. I mean, he's a good fielder with a power bat. There's places for those kind of guys in Major League Baseball.
Yeah. I just, if the opportunity arises where you can make that big leap, you're obviously going to do it at this point of the game.
Absolutely. But if we are, so we had the Ricketts say, the Cubs fans deserve better. We're going to go out there and spend money. If that's true, and you're really going to quickly relaunch this team and spend money, and then, yeah, Wisdom needs to be an upgrade. I don't hate the idea of keeping him on the team as a bench player. I think he's earned that. I think he might even have some trade value for the cost that he has to be a regular third baseman with pop. Like, somebody would trade something for that. I just don't want to cast him away for no reason. You do need to upgrade over him. I just think there's more holes on this team than Patrick Wisdom.
Well, yeah, I mean, you want to fill out your starting rotation going forward. That's going to be a combination of prospects and guys you bring in, some free agents. Maybe you make a trade, and you look at some of the prospects you have in the minors coming up. You want Jordan Wicks to be part of that mix. You'd like to see Caleb Killian as part of that mix. Mm-hmm. So, that's going to be a point of interest. The bullpen,
the bullpen, you need to rebuild because you traded half it away.
But they do it so well every year. They just find guys.
They do, but you've got to go out there and do it again.
Oh, of course. And, maybe you find more guys in your minor league system that can come up and be part of that. You find another Rowan Wick type guy. You find another Scott Efros type guy. Those you could find. I think one of the biggest challenges is how you're going to make this lineup stronger going forward. And speaking of which, we heard the big news about Hayward earlier this week.
We did. So he is probably never going to play a game as a Cub ever again.
And as you and I have said ad nauseum on this show so many times before, it's nothing personal. He's a great guy, great dude, great leader. And I will argue until I am dead that Jason Hayward made a huge impact on the team during that rain delay in Game 7. But he's, 32 now, 33, something like that.
I think he's 33.
Yeah, and he's not hitting. It just, you need that roster spot for somebody else.
He just takes bats away. You got to pay him either way.
Right.
But he's taking at bats away from younger players or better players or younger and better players.
Right. You want to see Nelson Velasquez in there. You picked up Franmil Reyes, which so far has been really, really fun to watch. That's a guy who has 30, 40 home run capability that maybe just needs a change of scenery. And so far he's done very well. He's got 2 hits tonight, including a 2-run homer. I mean, this guy's power is unbelievable. His raw power is something to be marveled at.
This is the fun part about a rebuild is you can't really pick up reclamation projects if you're a Yankees or an Astros or a Dodgers and try to do that. Right now with the Cubs, like you can, Reyes was a guy that got DFA'd. You pick him up and you liked, there was something you liked about him and felt that you could harness, and it's working out well. But you've, if you're the Cubs though, you still need to find another stud bat, period. You're gonna 95% likely lose Wilson Contreras. You've got to replace that bat.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't want to think about that until we have to get there, honestly.
But once you take Jason Hayward out of the picture, your outfield, Ian Happ, Christopher Morel, Rafael Ortega, Franmil Reyes, Seiya Suzuki, Nelson Velasquez.
I mean, those are the ones you could count on right now. Yes.
I mean, it's.
Is Brandon Davis going to be part of that mix? Hope sooner than later, we hope.
Probably. And that also compounds how you work free agency, because you don't want to block your top couple of players in the minor league system.
Well, I think free agency, you're looking at potential infield bats. They mentioned the shortstops, whether it's Trey Turner or Carlos Correa when he opts out, or Dansby Swanson. That's kind of what you're looking at there with, obviously Brennan Davis is an outfielder. So, there you can make a move or two for depth, but, I don't think you're going to be signing a slew of stud outfielders. I think Ian Happ's going to be in there. Obviously, Seiya Suzuki is going to be in there. And, maybe you play more Christopher Morel and Velasquez in center, and you bring in one other guy. And then when the time comes for Davis to come up, he gets an everyday chance in center field.
I mean, you've got Nolan Arenado will be a free agent. Trey Turner.
Well, that's an opt-out, right?
Well, I'm sure he will.
Boy, could you imagine if we got Nolan Arenado at third?
Yeah, there's always Aaron Judge.
Yeah, and I still think, even if the Cubs do shell out a lot of money, I still think that's a pipe dream. But
I think so too. Justin Turner's a free agent, but I don't think he ever goes anywhere. He either retires or he goes back to the Dodgers.
Trey Turner is the one I want.
Yeah, and like you said, can Trey Turner play third base?
Well, if you want to keep him at short, you're going to have some shuffling to do. I mean, here's the thing. Nico Horner isn't going to move to third base.
No.
He doesn't have the arm for third
No,
base.
neither is Nick Madrigal.
No, God, no. Nick Madrigal is either a DH or a second baseman. There is no other position Nick Madrigal is going to play. I mean, is it possible that if Nick Madrigal builds up a lot of value over this last month and a half, that he might be a trade chip in the offseason?
I mean, that's possible. Like, Nick Madrigal is not going to be the reason that I don't sign a Trey Turner.
Oh, of course not. Of course not.
It's honestly, if you end up with 3 quality middle infielders, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
You can always solve having too many good players. That's not the issue. It's not having enough. That is the beauty of a Nolan Arenado over a Trey Turner is he's a third baseman.
Right.
But man, can you imagine though if they added Nolan Arenado and Aaron Judge?
That would be fun.
And your outfield, then it's Aaron Judge, Seiya Suzuki, Ian Happ, probably. Unless you move Ian Happ to make room for some of these younger players. Or I guess Ian Happ could play a little first base too.
Train Ian Happ to be a first baseman.
But no, I'm just saying is have him be the flexible guy. Because really, Aaron Judge is not flexible.
No, unless Aaron Judge is like, you know what? Like, let's say if you got Aaron Judge and Wilson Contreras left, Aaron Judge could just be like, all right, you're our DH.
Yeah, I mean, that's a possibility too. Because you do have the DH now full-time in the NL. Ian Happ is a good enough defensive outfielder that you don't want to put him at DH.
No. There's other worthy guys to put at DH.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's a slew of good players. Jacob deGrom will be a free agent. Chris Sale will be a free agent.
He is healthy. He is unbelievable. Jacob deGrom.
He really is. You know what's funny is at one point Jacob deGrom was like the weak link in that awesome murderer's row of young pitchers the Mets had.
Yeah, you had Matt Harvey, you had Thor,
you had Noah Syndergaard, you had Jacob deGrom, and then you had the grizzled old veteran Bartolo Colon.
Yep. Which I think he did well in that rotation because they were so used to seeing like 100-mile-an-hour fastballs and like 95-mile-an-hour changeups, and then you go from that to like 83-mile-an-hour fastballs. It had him completely off-timed.
The best part about it is I think Bartolo Colon made more money than the rest of that rotation combined.
Oh, probably. I mean, those were a lot of just up-and-comers when they made that World Series run.
Let's see. Man, actually, there's not. The free agent market is not as big as robust as I thought it would be.
Well, it might look better when you see a number of opt-outs.
Yeah.
Correa, Arenado, could be a few others.
Carlos Rodon will be a free agent.
Carlos Rodon. I'd take a flyer on him, even if it costs you a little bit of money. Yeah. Give me a lefty fireballer here. Or the White Sox should get him back.
they would have to pay for him. They don't like paying.
We don't like paying.
We're against paying. But honestly, the Cubs have not been terrible.
Did you see that the home run Ian Happ hit like a half hour ago? I don't know if you have the TV on while we're recording.
No, I didn't.
The location of the pitch was unreal. He just golfed it out.
But honestly, this team has not been terrible.
They've been fun bad. They're not a good team, but they're playing some competitive baseball. And yes, the schedule has eased up a bit, but still, when you're seeing some of the young guys play with more energy and you're seeing them contribute, you got to like that. You got to like what you see from Justin Steele. You continue to like what you see from Nico Horner. You like what you've seen from Christopher Morel. Nelson Velasquez, has had some hits. You watch that and you take it for what it is. And, you take the good out of it. That's what you got to do at this point. I don't think this is going to be quite as good as second half 2014, but maybe you kind of treat it like that. It's like, okay, we're not good yet, but we actually might see the light at the end of the tunnel here with some of the pieces. And look what the Cubs have done over the past week or so. More than a week. Okay, let's say a little more than a week. You've kind of, I don't want to make this sound offensive, but you kind of trim the fat a little bit. And what I'm saying is the cheap, older veterans that don't serve a purpose on a rebuilding team have been rid of. You got rid of VR.
Yep.
VR was a solid player for a while. I thought it was a decent signing, but he isn't good anymore. He's older. Andrelton Simmons wasn't giving you anything. He hasn't been good in a few years. He's gone. David Bodie's had kind of a rocky return. He's had some hits, but overall, it just, you sent him down. You sent down Frank Schwindel. I feel like the Cubs are truly embracing the future right now. And they're like, you know what?
And we
got to clear spots for what we need to do. And they absolutely should. They absolutely should. And, again, it's no disrespect to some of those guys, but, VR he's not the same guy he once was. He's older. Same thing with Andrelton Simmons. He's not the Gold Glove, semi-okay hitting player he once was. Jason Hayward isn't, he's well past his prime. You realize, what, there's not a spot for that anymore. There's no reason to have veterans as 25th and 26th man guys on a rebuilding roster at this point.
Right. It's absolutely none. No reason at all. Right now it should be about player development and honestly, I think player development will lead to as many or more wins than riding grizzled old veterans that are not part of any team's future.
Willie just homered.
So it's the right decision all around. Sure, you're going to have some growing pains when you rely on young at bats, young players, but I think the ultimate result is going to be a much stronger team going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Ranking these players by their on-base percentage, Wilson Contreras, Ian Happ, Nico Horner, Christopher Morel, Seiya Suzuki, those there's a nice mix of players that are part of your future in there. Morel, Horner, Suzuki, Ortega has been up and down. Velasquez up and down, but we're starting to see growth out of players. And I like that. It gives you flexibility to construct your team for next year. Because next year you had better see a skeleton of a winning ball club. You should be able to be like, all right, okay, these are components here. We need to build around these components.
And you know what? It also helps too when you can look down at the farm every day and see progress with a lot of those players.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're seeing Pico Armstrong continue to rise and a bunch of other guys.
Honestly, do you think there's a shot of Pico Armstrong making the roster next year?
I still think that's a 2024, but you never know.
What about late season call up next year?
Maybe.
Does Brennan Davis make the roster next season? Start opening day roster?
No. With all that time he's missed, I just don't see it. I think at earliest, best case scenario, we're talking mid-season.
Okay. So opening day roster, this is a very early prediction. Of the prospects that are in the minors right now, who do you think is on the roster for opening day, if anybody?
Depending on how the rest of this year goes, and depending on how spring training goes, Caleb Killian might be one of those guys.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say Jordan Wicks and Caleb Killian will be on the roster next year.
Yeah, I'm tempted to say Wicks, but maybe. And I don't know about opening day roster, but with the progress he's made, you wonder what's the timeline? Could it be soon for a guy like Miguel Amaya? It's worth questioning, I think.
I mean, a lot is going to depend on what happens with Wilson Contreras. If Wilson goes, like, everything's up in the air.
Right. Another guy, maybe you want to think about this too. He is currently on the 40-man roster, is Alexander Canario. Could we even see him in September? Maybe that's something to ask too. Also, Matt Mervis, we could see him next year. Maybe even on the opening roster. I mean, there's possibilities. I just, it's kind of, it can be difficult to project prospects a lot, but I think there's potential for some guys to be up here fairly soon.
What about a Ryan Jensen?
Yeah.
Probably bullpen.
Absolutely. I don't know if DJ Hers, that might still need a little more seasoning.
You go in the cabinet and you're like, I'm going to put a little oregano here and some allspice.
Stir it up a bit, turn up the heat.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at here the prospects. Ryan Jensen has a chance as a bullpen arm because they're going to have to rebuild that. Depending on what they want to do, like Hayden Wesneski, possible if they want to bring him from, bullpen to starting pitcher. That's a possibility.
I mean, when he came here, it was well documented that he was closer to the majors. I mean, he was already in AAA with the Yankees.
Yeah, so he's probably, but did they make him a middle relief pitcher and then move him, gradually put him in a starting rotation?
I mean, it's going to depend on how the roster is constructed.
Yeah, I mean, guys are starting to move closer and closer to being, at the show.
Yeah, they are. Some are still a ways away, but some are moving closer. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's I just can't wait for the time when we've actually got we've a continual rotation of farm guys where it's not, oh, hey, we just pulled these guys up. Now our farm system is crap for 5 years. Like a Dodgers and a Astros where you could and the Padres where they're still good. And then you're like, oh, hey, their minor league team is still chock full of players.
Yeah, that's the ultimate dream right there.
Yeah. And I think it's
just
possible.
Don't have Fernando Tatis.
I was shocked by that.
Yeah, that's oof.
That I texted Gary when I found out, and I was like, does this make you feel better about the trade? And
what do you say?
And he's like, man, he's like, we traded him when he was like 17. Like, stop it. He's like, I feel more bad about trading Sammy Sosa than I do Fernando Tatis.
Yeah.
And I was like,
fair answer.
And I was like, it's just payback for all the shit about, oh, you traded Dylan Cease. And he's like, well, that really just started this year. And I was like, yeah, but those same people, they just transitioned from, oh, I can't believe you traded Eloy to, I can't believe you traded Cease. It's the same people. They just changed the tune a little bit.
Dylan Cease is pretty damn good. He's on a historic pace, and he deserves to be commended for that.
Yeah, it'd be real nice if we would have kept him. He was the sweetener. He was the sweetener in that trade.
His stuff is so good, and it's a shame that the Sox couldn't get a win for him in his last start because, he keeps going with these starts of like one run or less, and you look at the slider he has and the fastball. I mean, he just throws disgusting stuff.
I mean, can you imagine if the Cubs still had him like that?
I don't. I don't even think about that anymore. To be honest, I don't. That was 5 years ago. That was a different regime.
Oh, I know. I get it. Listen, I get it. I'm just saying, playing the what if game is the rebuild looks a lot different if you have Dylan Cease right now.
Well, the Sox sure appreciate it, as they should. He is a damn good pitcher.
He is. And now if they can just put a club together around him and play baseball and not have an old drunk racist manager.
Well, they did win. They're only 2.5 back at Cleveland now.
Woo.
Make something of it. You've been doing this all season. Make something of it. And Joey Votto strikes out and the Cubs win. So Chicago is 3 for 3 on this Saturday.
Yeah, good.
Bears, Sox, Cubs all win. Not a bad day at the office.
No, not at all. And the Cubs are now in the middle of the division. There's no way they can catch up to first or second, but they are above the Pirates and the Reds, which we fully expected going into the season.
And you know what? I don't give a shit about lottery and all that crap. This isn't the NBA. Yeah. This isn't the NFL. Just if you're going to be one of those people that tank, just stop it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Honestly, I think the Cubs just need to be, it's being smart because you find good guys anywhere in the draft. I think the smart money is betting on the international market.
Absolutely. And I mean,
that's where
the bread comes from. That's where the real talent. I mean, it's legit talent. I'm not saying you can't draft great talent in the draft. Don't get me wrong. But if you win the international draft, that gives you an advantage.
Absolutely. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think I've said my piece.
Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. It's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, or ShyFanPat2 on Twitter, or AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you all so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan.
She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like
Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on the plains.
Bears 31 to -7.
the Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down, I wanna